Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode. Trying to do this weekly, it's turning out to be quite difficult. The amount of time I spend learning how to produce a video has been shocking. This one's a tricky one. I'm going to introduce you to some of my bees. I thought it was going to be easy. I've made quite a few videos about the bees over the years, and I thought it was going to be a doddle really, and actually it's turned out to be really difficult. I've probably got about 8 or 10 different videos. My camera kept stopping halfway through. I was in my bee suit with big gloves on, so I couldn't work it. I bought these new microphones, so hopefully that will solve the sound problems. I had a few people comment on the poor quality of the sound on the last video, so hopefully we'll solve that. So what I'm going to do, a quick run through, opening up a hive, show you the bees. It's a bit of a one-take wonder. I'll try and edit out some of the bits that really didn't work. I mean, there's a few bits where I'm saying, oh, look at this, you know, and it's completely off the frame. I'll edit them out, obviously. They're just annoying. I thought I'd just give you a quick look at my bees and see whether that interests you or not. I love them. I really, really enjoy having them. And hopefully you'll get an appreciation for them too. So follow along. Here we go. I've made loads of videos about this and I just haven't got the hang of it yet, so I'm going to keep trying until I get it right. These are 2 hives in my garden. The largest one on the left there, it's a bit of a Franken hive at the moment because it's got so much honey on it. They've been so productive. I've just been adding supers and supers and supers. And I haven't had enough. These things on the side are called lifts. I haven't got enough lifts. I've had to nick some off a friend of mine gave me a hive from her dad who was retiring as a beekeeper. Thank you, Corin. You'll see that they're actually being used, and I've had to add them to this. It's not perfect because if it rained there's a gap there, but I'm going to be taking some boxes off that today. The other hive down at the bottom here, that's a swarm I've collected. It's not perfect having them right next to each other like this, but they are getting on fine. It's all strapped up, and early in the morning before they start flying, I'll close that up and pop it in the car and drive it up to another apiary, and that'll be out the way. The other problem with working on these hives, which has made it a bit more difficult to film as well, is when you work on a hive, you normally stand at the back of the hive and work on it from the back, and that way you're not in the way of the bees flying in and out at the front. When I work on this, if I stand in front of it, by the time I'm finished, I literally, my ankles and my shins are absolutely covered in bees, and the danger there is when you move you squash them as well. So it's far from perfect, this location, and the fact I've fallen in the pond a couple of times doing it. Hopefully I won't do that this time, but let's have another go at making yet another video and seeing if we can get some decent quality videos to show you the girls. I had to just quickly add this, and it's probably going to be completely out of frame, you know, completely different to the rest of the video, but who cares. I had to add this because it's probably the most important thing about what I enjoy about keeping bees, and that is you never finish learning. These old boys that have been doing bees all their life, they say, well, I've only been doing it 50 or 60 years. You never finish learning. Every time you open up the hive, there's something new to learn, something to pick up on. And there's a lovely joke that the beekeepers say. They say, you can read all the books you like, but the bees might not have read the same books. And it's so true. All you can do, because they're livestock, all you can do is try and persuade them. You can't stop them swarming, you can try and persuade them not to swarm. If you go and pick up a swarm, you can try and persuade them into a hive. You can't make them do anything. And that's one of the things I love about the beekeeping, and I just felt it's so important that I'd missed that out of the original intro to the video. I felt I had to sort of drop this badly produced and probably what's the bloody word, continuity, with no continuity video in to try and explain that to you. So hopefully I've got that major big point across. As a lifelong learner, if you love learning, oh my god, bees just going to blow your mind because there's so much to learn. So here's the hive with what they're called lifts. The bits on the outside here which go up, keep the roof on. This is a WBC hive, often referred to as a Winnie the Pooh hive because it's how people think hives look. Lots of hobby beekeepers have them. They've got a lot of advantages, but for commercial beekeepers they mean you've got to lift all these bits off on the outside before you even get to the hive. So generally the commercial beekeepers, they have hives that look just like this. They don't bother with the lifts on the outside. So if we have a look at this, basically what we've got down here is the brood box. It's a bigger box, it goes down right to the base, up to here. It's probably not quite twice, not quite two of these, but not far off. And that's where the bees live. That's where the queen is, that's where they keep their brood, that's their space. You'll probably just see a piece of metal here. That's a frame called a queen excluder. And what that does is it's got exactly the right gap to allow normal bees to come up through the frame, up into these boxes, but not the queen. By keeping the queen in the box at the bottom, we're effectively making sure that there's no eggs, brood, pollen, that sort of thing in these boxes. These boxes we want for honey so we can extract. So we'll get down to that queen excluder and we'll have a look. As we go up through here, these boxes are called supers. This is what we put the honey in. This box here is a clearer board. It's a board with cones in it, we'll get to it. And what I'm trying to do is take the bees out of the top two boxes, which are now full of honey, and take them down into the lower boxes to fill them. We'll get onto that. So this is the clearer board. I've taken the supers off the top here. Tell you what, these plants are going to drive me bloody mad. And you'll see, this one's called a Canadian clearer board. It's had two big heavy supers of honey on top, so it's pushed it down. And what that's done with these cones is it's taken the bees down. It makes it more difficult for them to go back up. I'm just going to bang the bees off there. Just knocks all the bees off into the supers that we're trying to fill. So we'll pop these supers off. We'll come onto these. Let's get down into the brood. So this is the queen excluder. This one needs a wooden frame around it. It's squashing them a bit. I'll just give them a little bit of smoke just to move them. So smoke has a number of functions. One, it moves bees. They don't particularly like it. They think their forest is on fire. I don't particularly like it either. And the other is, oh, let me move that smoker. That's going to be coughing all afternoon with that. The other is that the bees communicate with pheromones, and by smoking you're covering up their pheromones. It's kind of a bit like cutting their phone lines so they can't communicate. So I'll just check this is all in frame, and it looks alright. Move it down a little bit maybe. As I've said before, you normally work on the hive from the back. Because I'm working on the front, I'm going to be covered in bees by the time I'm finished. And unfortunately that's just, I don't have a choice here because the hive's in the corner. So if I take the first frame out, I'll show you that. I'll try and hold it still. The last few videos I messed up by not holding it still enough. You may be able to see in there, some of the cells are shiny. That's nectar which they'll convert to honey. This is converted honey and they've capped it over with a wax cap. And in here there's this funny grey, sometimes multicoloured sections which is pollen. These are very grubby old frames. At some point I'm going to have to reframe this hive and give them some nice new fresh frames. They're very dark, they're very messy. Occasionally we can see male bees. So this is a male bee here. This big fella here. They don't sting. They're pretty clumsy really, they sort of blunder around the hive and they don't do any work. They can't even feed themselves or clean themselves, but they're good for breeding, that's what they're there for. This girl here, you can see pollen on her legs, rather beautiful. She's collected that pollen and crushed it using her knee joint to put it in those sacs. And they compress the pollen with their knee joint, which is where the expression the bee's knees comes from. So this is an early frame. Unlikely to see the queen on here. I've had a lot of problems finding the queen in this colony. She's very, very good at hiding. And with these dark frames, it's quite difficult to spot her sometimes. The way we normally look for her is she's the one that runs. Now, I want to take this frame out. I don't want to risk that the queen's on there because I don't want to take the queen out. So I'm going to shake the bees into the hive so that I've got less to look at. And now I can be pretty sure the queen's not on here because I'm going to put this down at the side of the hive. The last thing I want to do is take the queen outside of the hive. So just a quick check to make sure she's not on there. She's not. No, she's not. So we'll pop that down at the side. We'll carry on through the hive. So, left to their own choice, they'll go through and they'll create these amazing curvy shapes of comb with tiny gaps between, which we can't then look into without breaking. And so what we do is we put these frames in and it sort of forces them into straight lines. Now you probably notice, if you can see it in the shot, and I'm just going to make sure you can see it in the shot. Yeah, down the front here, this is nectar that's fallen out of that frame. It's kind of like sugary water. And look at these girls here, they're not going to waste that. Look at them all gathering it up. That's me that spilt that, but they're gonna soon clean that up. They're not going to want to waste that. We'll take the next frame out and have a look. As I say, these are particularly grubby frames. This colony, I'm going to have to start putting some new clean frames in. It's called a hive tool. This one's a J tool. It's the one I particularly like. There's lots of different versions, but it's designed really for leveraging these frames up so that you can get hold of them like that. This frame's a bit lighter, and that's because as we get into the centre of the hive, we're getting onto things like brood. So this is young bees here. I'll try and get this into the shot. So this, let me blow on it. They don't like being blown on. So this sort of digestive biscuit texture is young bees ready to hatch. Around the edge here is pollen. You see the colours of the pollen, and then around that is nectar, which will get converted into honey. Again, turn the frame over and we'll have a little look at it. This is not a huge colony. This is probably about, I'd guess, 50,000-60,000 bees. Big colony will go up to 100,000 bees. I've got to say, this bloody plant is driving me mad. I'm going to have to come out here and cut this bloody thing back. It's driving me nuts. Let's see if I can hook it up out the way for now. I'll just break the bloody thing off soon. Right, let's go on. So, I'm going to give them a quick puff of smoke just to send them down. I don't want to squash bees, and the smoke moves them out the way quite nicely. Let's get on to the next frame. I'd love to see the queen, just to show her to you, but as I say, she's a bit of an elusive one. Now that girl's just tried to sting me, and you may or may not be able to see the sting sticking out of my glove there. I'm going to give that a quick puff of smoke, because when they sting you, they give off a pheromone that tells the others where to sting. And by masking that pheromone, I'm less likely to get stung on that finger again. They don't normally get through these gloves, but occasionally they do. This is quite a heavy frame. Mostly brood again. See this biscuit texture and colour is brood. When this lot hatches, this colony is going to be very big. It's going to expand very fast. Just have a quick look for the queen. Some bright sparks going to see her now. I don't know if you can see my finger here. You can see two bees head to head. Oh, I've disturbed them. What they're doing is they're swapping nectar, giving the others a taste of the nectar that they found, so that they can go and look for it. Again, no sign of the queen there. This queen isn't marked. What we do is we put a coloured dot on her shoulder. Makes her very much more conspicuous, and makes her a lot easier to find. But I haven't marked this girl. Can't normally find her. So, quick look at this frame. The bees are very agitated today. We've got thunderstorms around. You may notice from this frame, there's a couple of things that are interesting. Down the bottom here, this is foundation. What we do is we put in beeswax sheets that have this hexagon printed on them, and it sort of triggers the bees to draw it out into comb like this. So down here is the original foundation. This is where they've drawn it out with beeswax. It sort of triggers something in their mind to draw it out. Now you'll note what I tend to do, look at one side of the frame, flip it over and look at the other, because the queen will always run away from the light side of the frame. She'll always try and get to the dark side of the frame. So by flipping it over, suddenly we surprise her and hopefully catch her running back again. But nothing to see there, unfortunately. I'll be a bit careful with this frame because this one has a bit sticking out. If you look down here now, look where the nectar's been spilt. They'll have cleaned all that up before I shut the hive up again. They'll do it so quickly. So again, quick look at the frame. I don't see the queen. I'm sure one of you bright sparks is going to spot her and say, "You missed her." And I'm going to name and shame the first person to do it. Flip it over and look for the bee that runs. And I don't see her there either. It's a bit of a messy frame. All these frames are a bit messy. These girls have been on these frames for a while. Now there's an interesting one on this frame because just blow on them to move them. If you look here, this is normal brood, and you may be able to see these are larvae. These little white C's are larvae, and then they'll get capped over, ready to pupate. These larger ones are drone brood, so these will be male bees. Interestingly, they're unfertilised eggs, which means that the males are then taking on the genetics from an unfertilised egg, which blows my mind actually. So to lay a drone, the queen lays an unfertilised egg, and to lay a normal brood, she lays a fertilised egg, and she can, with her back legs, she can feel the difference in the size of the hole in the cell, and it's that different size hole in the cell that determines whether she lays a fertilised or an unfertilised egg. Incredible stuff, really. Another quick look just in case the queen's running around. They also have a habit of covering the queen, so when you see a clump of bees like this, it often means they've got the queen underneath and they're covering her. If the queen gets squashed, and to be honest, the most likely thing to squash the queen is a clumsy beekeeper. If the queen gets squashed, it can mean the end of the colony, because they can't, it's only the queen that's laying eggs, so all these are daughters are for the one queen. Now if the queen disappears, or she gets weak, or she gets squashed by me, hopefully they'll pick that up quick enough, and what they'll do is they'll take a normal egg, female egg, and they'll put it in a special cell, and they'll feed it royal jelly, and that will make it develop into a new queen. But there's no certainties in it. So this is mostly brood. It's a really busy frame. Again, this colony is going to expand very quickly soon, and I'll need to be ready for that, because if they expand too quickly and run out of space, they'll produce some queen cells and they'll swarm. I'll lose half my bees and half my honey production from it. So we really don't, and probably have to deal with the swarm as well when somebody rings me in the village to say they've got it hanging from their tree in their garden. So another quick look for the queen there. Another quick look on the other side in case she's run round. Oh, would have done even quick if I hadn't caught my thumb. No, I don't see her there. As I say, this one's really tricky to catch, and rather stupidly I haven't put my marker pen in my pocket, so if I do see her I'm not going to be able to mark her. Normally what I'd do is catch her, put a little coloured dot on her shoulders. She's very much more difficult to hide then. A quick look on this frame. As I say, they're very edgy at the moment. There's thunderstorms around. It's not really the time to be opening them up, but I kind of wanted to get you a quick preview of them. Incidentally, if there's anything that really intrigues you about these, then let me know and we'll go into a bit more detail. This is, so there's only so much I can cover in half an hour of showing you the bees. Another thing I'm looking out for is a waggle dance. The waggle dance is what the bees do when they've found a really good source of nectar. They come back and they do a little dance that tells the other bees the vector from the hive. So basically the angle they need to fly away from the hive at based on the sun and how far they need to fly. They also give out a little sample of the nectar so the other bees know what to go and look for. So when you think they've got a brain no bigger than a sesame seed, that's really pretty incredible behaviour. So as I put these back in, I'm likely to squash bees, so I'm going to just put another little bit of smoke on here just to move them out of the way. Mainly on that side. I don't want to over smoke because the queen is a bit sensitive to clearing off with the smoke. And as I say, I don't often spot this girl. So this is not a great looking frame actually for a beekeeper. What you want to see is a laying pattern that starts in the centre, goes out in a circle, and this is what we call a spotty pattern. What it might mean that the frames are just old and knackered and I need to give them some fresh frames, but it might also mean that the queen's starting to fail. The other thing you have to look out for is little holes in the frame. You can see a hole where my thumb is there, and the queens use them to run away, and they often nip through that hole just as you swing the frame round. So what I tend to do is, as I swing the frame round, I look at that hole. There's a bee being born. This is always nice to see. So by my thumb you should be able to see a head just starting to poke through there. They walk all over as she's hatching. There's another one hatching here by my thumb. They hatch, they come out all raggedy, and within a couple of minutes they've pumped their wings up. They pump their wings up with blood pressure. They pump their wings up and they start work. So by my thumb here, watch this one, she's not far out now. God, I hope I've got this in frame. The last time I did this I missed it altogether. So checking by my thumb here. Here she comes, shoulders out. Here we go, coming out. She's going to squeeze out. The others just walk over her. Any minute. Here she comes, just pulling her tail out now. You can see her wings are all raggedy. There, she's out. There she goes. She'll have a couple of minutes to pump herself up, get her blood pressure, get her wings out. She's fluffier than the others. Then she'll start work, and she'll work till the day she dies. It's brutal, really. Typically at this time of the year, she'll live for 6 weeks. In the summer, she'll go from that, she'll start kind of housework, cleaning cells ready for eggs to be laid in, and feeding young. When she's a teenager, she'll become a guard bee, stroppy teenager on the door, making sure only bees from this colony get in. She'll then start doing some flights to learn her way around and become a forager, where she'll go out foraging. And she'll die in the field foraging. She'll go out, her wings get worn, and she'll go out for nectar and pollen. She'll get overladen with nectar and pollen, and her frayed wings won't let her get home, and she'll die in the field. And that's a typical 6-week cycle. So these girls are hatching and dying within about 6 weeks. It's a constant process. The queen will be laying typically around 1,500, 2,000, sometimes more eggs per day. And it's a constant attrition of bees as they lose bees out in the field working, and the queen's creating new ones. Everyone says, I'll be the queen bee in the hive. Oh, I'm the queen bee. I can tell you now, you really don't want to be the queen bee. It's a horrible task. She works to the day she dies. She lays her body weight in eggs every day. She can't feed herself or look after herself. She doesn't even have stomach parts, so all the other bees have to feed her. And then when she gets a bit weak and she's not laying enough eggs and she starts losing her pheromone smell, they make a new one and either bump her off or oust her out the hive. It's pretty brutal. So as we get towards the end of the colony here, notice there's a lot more male bees, the big clumsy bees. They've got sort of flatter bottoms, they can't sting. They are really just big blithering idiots, but they're critical for the breeding process. And when there's a virgin queen in the area, be surprised how quickly these blithering idiots spring to life and suddenly become alpha males. So the virgin queen goes off on a mating flight, and they go to an area. Nobody really quite knows why they choose the certain area that they do. God, I thought that was the queen then, but it's not. And she flies along fast, and all the male bees fly behind her, trying to catch up with her, trying to breed with her. So it's kind of survival of the fittest that can catch up with her. The moment the male breeds with her, his dick falls off. That's his penalty, and he falls to the ground and dies. So they're a one-shot wonder, so to speak. But that's what they're here to do. The queen will breed with quite a lot of males, and she'll come back from her mating flight, or a number of mating flights. Hopefully she'll get back. She's not a good flyer because she's not flown before, and she'll get back. Normally with an entourage, a lot of bees will follow the newly bred queen back into a new hive, and that'll be it for her. Her days are over. She's now just an egg-laying machine. She'll just be laying eggs for the rest of her life. So it's really not a good life for a queen bee. Though some could argue she gets a good orgy on the start, but I might not want to put that in the video. So this is a frame of brood. This is not a good sign. This is little white ghostly bees. They're in a line, which often means there's been a wax moth go along there. I mean, if you don't like this buzzing, beekeeping's not for you. This is fairly typical. As I say, this is a reasonably strong colony, and this colony is a bit edgy today. A few of them trying to sting me, I think, here. Oh, no, they're not. No, they're not. I wanted to show you them trying to get the sting in. This colony's a bit edgy because there are thunderstorms forecast. It's very humid, very hot, and they're quite a big colony. You know, they're not a weedy colony, this one. Now, moving suddenly is a real no-no. They don't like sudden movement. They like nice, slow, gentle movement. So let's close these girls up, and they'll settle very quickly. You may notice that nearly all that nectar that I spilt has been cleaned up. It's pretty much dry, the wood here. There's still a little bit because they're still picking up on it. So let's get the old smoker going. Here it goes. You see how effective that is at moving the bees out the way. They don't like it, but it's for their own good. We really don't want to squash them. Now, if I close this like this and leave this gap here, they'll fill it with their own pretty patterns, which for them is lovely. For me it's a bloody nuisance. So what I do is I just even out the frames a bit so there's not any huge gaps, and then they're less likely to fill it with their patterns. So again, they're back up on top again, so I'll give them another quick foof before I put the queen excluder on. I'm sure foof isn't the proper term, but you know what I mean. God, I hope this microphone's working. Right, let's pop the queen excluder on. So this this mesh will allow a normal bee to get through, but it won't let a queen go through. She's just slightly too wide to get through that very carefully calculated gap. And again, a little bit of smoke because I'm going to put another super on top. So that's... I'm not sure if we caught that last bit, so I'm just going to show you that frame of honey. Look at that, isn't that beautiful? That's capped off honey, ready to be extracted. So what we'll do, get a sharp knife, cut the cap off on both sides, and these, let me make sure I'm in shot, yeah. So these cells are angled at about 10 degrees upwards. So we put it in an extractor that spins it so that centrifugal force pushes it out that way. And that's how we extract it. I'm huffing and puffing a bit because I've just put those supers on and they're heavy. I just broke that seal on the honey there, and this bee was already there cleaning it up. You know, they don't like to waste all their hard work. There's a lot of hard work in one of these frames. So that's that. I'm going to pop the top back on. And I'll grab the camera and just give you a little look around at the mayhem around me. So if I show you the colony now, this is the front of the hive. As you can see, there's a lot of bees about. There's a lot of bees on my boots because they've been at the front of the hive. There's probably a lot of bees on my back that have come home and flown into the back of me as I've been standing here. This lovely copper coloured pollen on this girl here, look. Another thing that you might see, I'm hoping to see but can't see at the moment, what they do, yeah, here's some doing it here. See these ones flapping their wings and they've got their bums in the air, and that's them sending off a pheromone, scenting, and they're sending off a pheromone to guide all the other bees back to this hive, either because there's something going on at the hive or because it's all a bit chaotic at the moment. And it's called fanning, and they've got little scent glands in the back of their tails to give off the scent, and they're just blowing their wings over that. This one here, classic, look, bum in the air, wings going like crazy. And what she's doing, she's sending off a signal saying the hive's here, the hive's here. So I'm going to leave. And there's the queen. That's her there with the yellow dot. She's not much bigger. If you notice, she runs differently. She runs away. She's trying to get out the light. Her job is to evade being captured or caught. She's going to go around to the darker side of the frame. See her there, and when I turn her over, you'll see her again. And she'll run back again to the darker side of the frame, probably. There she is there. Not a lot different. She's got ginger legs. She's got a longer body. But if you notice, she moves differently. She runs around. She's trying to be out the frame. This one is elusive, really good at going through little holes in the frame to get away. Turn her over again. She's disappeared. She's an absolute master of hiding, this one. There she is back on this side, look. And that's a good quality for a queen, really. You don't want her to be putting herself at risk. Now when they're settled on the frame and she's not running around like that, they all turn to face her and pick up the smell from her. So if that's piqued your interest for bees and you think you fancy a bit of beekeeping, I would thoroughly recommend it. There's a couple of things I would suggest. The first is it's quite a lot of work. They're livestock, you've got to look after them. You know, I have to go off to France, and I have to accept sometimes I go to France, you know, just when they're about to swarm. I have to do my very best to try and stop them swarming while I'm away, or have to put up lure boxes, so if they do swarm, hopefully I keep the bees in my garden or in my apiary. I would suggest, if you want to get into bees, find yourself a local beekeeper. Most beekeepers love to show you their bees. They're blown away, they're intrigued by them, and they love showing them to people. I'm always happy to show people my bees. I love taking them to see them because I know that most people come away with their minds completely blown by them. Some people get freaked out by them, and it's good to know if that's going to be you. I mean, if you turn up at the bees and you get a lively colony with bees everywhere, or you get a nasty colony. It does happen, and you will have to deal with that at some point if you keep them. You need to know whether you can deal with that, and some people can't. I've taken people to see the bees. They've been desperate to look at the bees. We open the hive up, bees start flying around, all the buzzing, feels like chaos if you're not used to it, and it freaks them out. And I always say to them, if you're not happy, just quietly walk away and don't undo your suit. People walk away and undo their suit. Just fantastic. Anyway, if you want to take up beekeeping, I would find yourself a local beekeeper and go and see the bees with them, or buy yourself a bee experience. Some people sell bee. I'm going to start doing it soon, selling bee experiences. Go out, see the hive, but don't underestimate how much work they are. There's a lot of lifting. There's a lot of, there's a lot of caring for them. Don't underestimate that. Then I would suggest you go and find your local beekeepers group. They're all, there's the British Beekeeping Association. Most of them are affiliated to that. Those groups run typically monthly talks, monthly meetings, and they'll put you in touch with a really good beekeeper. They'll also give you courses on basic beekeeping. At the very minimum, I'd go and get your basic beekeeper's certificate. I went and got mine. At the time, I was going out with a commercial beekeeper, so I was really kind of dropped in at the deep end with big, strong colonies, and it was work. It was working bees, bish, bash, bosh, get them done, rather than go up to your hive and enjoy some time with them, which is what I do now. I've got about 4 apiaries at the moment, exactly 4. Typically with 2, 3, up to 6 hives in an apiary. It's a lot of work, and I'm going to reduce them down. Originally, I was looking at beekeeping as a sort of retirement project, but really, you can't make any money out of honey. If you think you're going to make money out of your bees, you've either got to come up with something unique that nobody else is doing, or you've got to have hundreds of hives, and then you're into a full-time job with tractors and cranes and extractors and all the rest of it. Suddenly it's not beekeeping anymore, it's an industry. But I would suggest, if you're interested, find a beekeeper, go and have a chat with them, go and see if you can see the bees. If you still like it, perhaps do there's an introduction to bees where you go and see them, and then perhaps do a day's work with the beekeeper, because actually working with them is different to turning up, sitting down in the sunshine with some sandwiches and having a look through the bees and enjoying yourself. When you work with them, this time of the year, you're lifting big, heavy boxes on and off a hive in hot weather, in a suit, and it's not so fun. But you have to do it. So I would go and see the bees first, see if you like them, see if you're happy with them all flying around. If you still enjoy it, then perhaps go and help a beekeeper for the day. They'll always be happy for somebody to come along and help move boxes and things, heavy boxes. And if you still like it, join your local beekeepers group, go along, do your training, and get yourself your first set of bees. And it's lovely. I would highly recommend it. I've spent a huge amount of time producing this. It probably doesn't look like it, but I've spent a huge amount of time producing this week's episode. If you like it, hit the like and subscribe. It helps me no end. And I don't just do this for shits and giggles. I'm trying to build a channel here. So hopefully you'll do that, and we'll see you on the next episode. Bye.